She paid for her seat. She had every right to be there. But the moment she settled into first class, a man in a tailored suit decided she didn't belong. What happened next wasn't just humiliating. It was broadcast to an entire plane full of witnesses. He demanded. He insisted. He made a scene that would cost him everything. Because while he saw someone he thought he could dismiss, he had no idea who she really was. By the time he found out, it was already too late. This is the story of one flight that changed 2 lives forever and exposed a truth we still refuse to face. Her name was Diana Matthews, and she had learned long ago not to expect comfort from the world. She had built her life brick by brick, working 2 jobs through college, climbing corporate ladders that seemed designed to keep people like her at the bottom, and refusing to shrink herself to make others comfortable. Now at 42 she had earned everything she had. The designer handbag wasn't borrowed. The first-class ticket wasn't a mistake. And the confidence in her stride wasn't arrogance. It was survival. This particular Tuesday started like any other. Diana kissed her husband goodbye at their home in the suburbs, reminding him about the investor meeting she'd be attending in Chicago. He smiled that knowing smile, the one that said he was proud but also worried. They both knew what she'd face out there. They always did. The airport was crowded, the usual chaos of rolling suitcases and hurried goodbyes. Diana moved through security with ease, her platinum status ensuring she bypassed the longest lines. She had flown this route dozens of times for business. It should have been routine. But as she approached Gate 17, she noticed something shift in the air. The way eyes lingered a beat too long. The way conversations seemed to pause as she passed. She had felt this her entire life, that invisible weight of being watched, judged, measured against assumptions she never asked to carry. Still, she boarded the plane with her head high, finding her seat in first class, row 3, window seat. She settled in, pulled out her tablet, and prepared for the 2-hour flight ahead. The cabin filled slowly, passengers shuffling past with their carry-ons and travel pillows, and then he arrived. Seat 3B, right next to her. A middle-aged white man in an expensive suit, his face already twisted in confusion, then irritation. He stopped in the aisle, staring at her like she was a glitch in his perfectly ordered world. Diana knew that look. She had seen it 1,000 times before. But this time would be different. The man didn't sit down. He just stood there, blocking the aisle as other passengers squeezed past him with annoyed murmurs. His eyes moved from Diana to the seat number above her head, then back to Diana, as if the universe had made some terrible mistake that he alone could see. Diana didn't look up. She had learned this strategy years ago. Don't engage, don't react, don't give them the satisfaction. Her fingers scrolled across her tablet, reviewing the presentation she'd be delivering in Chicago. Stay calm, stay professional. Let it pass, but he wasn't passing. She felt him shift his weight, heard the sharp exhale of someone preparing to make a scene. Then came the words she'd been dreading. He called for the flight attendant. Not politely, not quietly. Loud enough that heads turned throughout the cabin. A young woman in a crisp uniform appeared within seconds, her smile already strained from a long day of passenger complaints. The man pointed at Diana like she was evidence in a crime. There must be some mistake, he insisted. He had paid for first class. He had earned his seat. Surely this woman belonged elsewhere. Perhaps she had wandered up from economy, confused about her ticket, lost in an area where she clearly didn't belong. Diana's jaw tightened. She still didn't look at him. Instead, she calmly pulled her boarding pass from her bag and handed it to the flight attendant without a word. Row 3, seat A, first class, paid in full. The flight attendant examined it, nodded, and politely informed the man that everything was in order. She suggested he take his seat so they could prepare for departure. But that should have been the end of it. It should have been a brief, embarrassing moment that faded as the plane took off. Instead, the man doubled down. He demanded to see a supervisor. He insisted there must be fraud involved. How else could someone like her afford first class? He questioned whether her ticket was legitimate, whether she had somehow scammed the system. His voice grew louder with each accusation, his entitlement expanding to fill the entire cabin. Other passengers watched now, some with discomfort, some with barely concealed agreement. A few pulled out phones, recording the spectacle unfolding in row 3. Diana finally looked up at him. Her expression was calm, measured, devastatingly controlled. She said nothing, not a single word in her own defense. She didn't have to. The fire in her eyes spoke volumes that her silence amplified. The flight attendant returned with the head purser, a tall woman with silver hair and the weary authority of someone who had seen every possible passenger meltdown. She reviewed Diana's ticket again. She confirmed her identity. She explained with barely restrained irritation that Ms. Matthews was exactly where she was supposed to be, and then she asked the man a simple question. Was he going to take his seat, or would he prefer to be removed from the aircraft? The cabin fell silent. Everyone waited. The man's face flushed deep red, not with shame but with rage. He wasn't backing down. Not to them. Not to her. What he didn't know was that his entire outburst was being watched by someone far more important than he could have imagined. Someone sitting just 3 rows behind. Someone who had already made a phone call. And what came next would shatter his world completely. The man refused to sit. His voice escalated, demanding justice for what he called reverse discrimination. He wanted Diana removed. He wanted compensation. He wanted everyone on that plane to acknowledge that he was the victim here. The head purser's patience finally snapped. She informed him that if he didn't take his seat immediately, security would escort him off the aircraft. The threat hung in the air like smoke. That's when someone stood up from row 6. A man in his late 50s, silver-haired and commanding, rose from his first-class seat with the kind of quiet authority that makes rooms fall silent. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His presence alone shifted the entire atmosphere of the cabin. He walked slowly down the aisle, his expensive shoes barely making a sound on the carpet. When he reached row 3, he looked directly at the man causing the scene, and his expression was ice. The complaining passenger seemed to recognize something in that moment. His bravado faltered. His eyes darted between the silver-haired man and Diana, suddenly searching for connections he should have seen earlier. The silver-haired man spoke just 3 sentences, quiet enough that only those nearby could hear clearly. But the words rippled through the cabin like an electric shock. He introduced himself as Richard Matthews, owner of Skyline Continental Airlines, the very aircraft they were standing on. And the woman this passenger had just publicly humiliated, demanded be removed, accused of fraud. That was his wife. The color drained from the man's face. Complete devastating realization washed over him in waves. Every insult he'd hurled, every assumption he'd made, every entitled demand for her removal, all of it had been witnessed by the one person who could destroy his career with a single phone call. Richard Matthews pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke quietly but firmly. Within minutes, 2 security officers appeared at the aircraft door. The man tried to apologize, tried to explain, tried to backtrack on every poisonous word he'd spewed. But Diana still hadn't said a single word. She didn't need to. Her silence was more powerful than any speech. The officers escorted him off the plane. His expensive suit, his first-class ticket, his inflated sense of superiority, none of it could save him now. As the aircraft door closed behind him, the cabin remained absolutely silent. Everyone had witnessed it. Everyone had recorded it. And everyone knew this moment would follow him forever. The plane took off 20 minutes later. Diana never said a word about what had happened. She opened her laptop, reviewed her presentation one final time, and when the flight attendant offered her a complimentary drink with a sympathetic smile, she politely declined. She didn't need their pity. She had needed their action, and this time finally she got it. But here's what most people don't understand about moments like these. They never truly end. Diana had won this particular battle. The man who tried to humiliate her faced consequences. He lost his job within 48 hours after the video went viral, his company severing ties to protect their reputation. Justice, people called it, karma, but Diana would board another plane next month. And the month after that. And each time she'd wonder if today would be the day someone else decided she didn't belong. Because that's the exhausting reality of existing while black in spaces that weren't designed with you in mind. You can own the airline and still be told you don't deserve your seat. The incident made headlines for a week. Think pieces were written. Social media exploded with outrage and support. People shared the video millions of times, each view adding to the spectacle. But spectacle isn't change. Attention isn't transformation. The deeper truth is this: that man wasn't an outlier. He wasn't uniquely terrible or exceptionally racist. He was simply bold enough to say out loud what countless others think in silence. He made visible the invisible calculations that happen every day, the assumptions about who belongs where, who deserves what, who can be challenged and who cannot. Diana's story went viral because her husband owned the airline, because there was power behind her to deliver consequences. But what about everyone else? What about every black woman who faces this same humiliation, without cameras rolling, without authority figures watching, without the privilege of being married to someone who can make the problem disappear? They endure it. They swallow it. They survive it. And tomorrow they board another plane, enter another boardroom, walk into another space where someone will decide they don't belong. So here's the question we should all be asking. How many people have to prove they deserve basic human dignity before we finally stop making them prove it? How many more flights? How many more scenes? How many more viral videos before respect becomes the default instead of something you have to earn by being connected to power? The answer should disturb you, because if it doesn't, you might be part of the problem.